The Smith & Wesson Model 5903, let's check it out. Today we're going old school. Before the introduction of polymer frame pistols, Smith & Wesson pretty much ruled the market on double single action pistols in the law enforcement community, especially with their third generation model 5906. It was one of the pinnacles of the steel frame pistol that was hammer fired. Now you may see this and think this looks exactly like a 5906, but this is actually the 5903. Which is a aluminum frame steel slide version of the 5906. These are just excellent guns. They're built like tanks, and really for about 10 years were some of the mainstays of Smith & Wesson in their semi-automatic line. Now Smith & Wesson introduced 3 generations of these pistols. The first were the model and then 2 numbers like the Model 59, and then they had the 3 digits, which was the second generation, and then with the 5906 and the 5903 that we have here, 4 digits, but it's the 3rd generation. Smith & Wesson introduced their Gen 3 series of semi-automatic pistols in 1989, and the 5906 was very popular with law enforcement. It was designed with law enforcement in mind. This is the 5903, which is an aluminum alloy frame version of the 5906. It's not quite as popular. There weren't as many made as the 5906, but it is a lighter weight pistol. These were made from 1990 to 1997. So for 7 years they produced the 5903. The generations of these pistols were a big success for Smith & Wesson. The Gen 1, Gen 2, and this Gen 3. That really set the precedent for Smith & Wesson with their semi-automatics. This is a 9mm. It holds 15 rounds plus 1. Unfortunately, the assault weapons ban happened during the middle of all this, so these were sold with a lot of 10-round magazines. You'll find those 10-round magazines around. First thing we're going to do is go ahead and make sure the gun is unloaded. So I'm going to drop the magazine. This is a stainless steel magazine. It does have the witness holes, 14 on one side and then marked 15 on the other. These are good quality magazines. Has a little bumper plate on the end. Now while we have the hammer back, I want to show you a couple of things. First off, of course, we had the magazine removed. These were designed for law enforcement, and because of that, they have the magazine disconnect. And I hate magazine disconnects, but I do understand why they would use them in law enforcement, and mainly because if an officer got into it with an individual trying to take his gun out of his holster, all the officer would have to do is drop the magazine and the gun would be inoperable, even if there was a round in the chamber. Now to show the action of the pistol, we're going to have to insert the magazine. One of the things I want to show you right up front is with the hammer back, it's in single action mode, and that means when you pull the trigger, it has a pretty a lighter weight trigger than it does in double action. If you have your hammer in the rear position, it does have a decocker. We can bring this down and it decocks the pistol. Now this is also in safe. So if you still can't fire the pistol with the safety on. So to fire it, you have to push it back up. This is the best way to carry it in the off safe round in the chamber, but you still have a safety feature here. And then if you need to draw the pistol, you can do it with double action. You pull the hammer back, you can see it pulling back that trigger. It's a really hefty trigger pull. Subsequent shots are going to bring the hammer into the rear position. So you have that first really difficult pull, and then the rest are single action with a much lighter pull. There's some take up right here, but it's pretty smooth. And then when we get right here, it's not a bad trigger. There's no real grit or anything. There's just a teeny bit of stacking right before you hit it, but it's pretty solid. Reset right there. So it's got a really short reset. We're going to check trigger pull weight with the Lyman trigger gauge. 10 pounds 13 ounces. 10 pounds even. 10 pounds 7 ounces. But now we're going to try single action. 5 pounds 15 ounces. 6 pounds 2.5 ounces. 6 pounds 2 ounces. So around the 6 pound mark, and it was going in different directions. But not a super light trigger, but really it's fairly crisp, and that adds a lot to the controllability of your trigger finger. You will notice the red dot, and that covers up right here when the decocker drops, so you know that it's on safe, and when you see the red dot, that means it is on fire. Now on here we have some Hogue grips, and it typically had a black plastic one piece. As you can see, this goes around, black plastic grip that fit all the way around with the Smith & Wesson logo. Of course, Hogue, these makes it a little soft. It's a little thicker, but it's not too bad. Now with the 15 round magazine, these guns have a pretty solid grip. There is some checkering right here on the front, and there's checkering on the front of your trigger guard. Of course, during this time, there weren't, accessory rails were not really part of the semi-automatic version. And so it just has, there's no room for accessories or anything like that. The stainless steel, really nice, very well done, which is Smith & Wesson quality. The aluminum frame, again, it matches pretty good with the stainless. It's a little bit whiter, where this has a little more silver to it. But overall, it has a really nice appeal to it. You've got your beaver tail right here, so you don't have to worry about slide bite, and it gives you a good support. The trigger, even though it comes down low, is somewhat recessed here, so it gives you a little more purchase to be able to lift up. The serrations are pretty good, and of course you've got your decocker actually to use to rack the slide, which kind of really is an added benefit. It has the Novak style rear sight, and then you have a front post. This did come with an adjustable version as well, and it has these ears that ride up. It's a little bit higher, and I'm sure you've seen those. Some of the hammers, though, I've noticed on both the 5906 and 5903 have cuts, recessed relief cuts here and here, and it's a darker color. And so I don't really, this is probably an earlier model. This was a police trade-in, and really, to be honest with you, it doesn't have a whole lot of wear. Most of the wear is just around like holster areas or places that would get bumped on the aluminum. But one of the great things about this is it's pretty impervious to the elements. Here we have the sights, and we have 2 dots. It's a little dingy. I could probably clean that up a little bit or add some white paint. And then right here at the front, it's also white dot. These sights are really easy to acquire. And to be honest with you, it was really like my natural point of aim. I'd just bring it up and it would be right on, spot on target. I'm sure that you can get aftermarket sights to go on here. The hammer, it just comes back. It's got a nice little notch to it if you want to go ahead and just cock it for your first shot. Of course, once you drop the decocker, and there's one in the chamber, if you're at the range, sometimes you don't really want to pull double action. You can just go ahead and pull it back and get ready to fire. And of course, the decocker is ambidextrous. You've got it on both sides. The magazine release has a little tab that kind of comes down, and then on this side you don't have it. Now, some of the later models did have a cut for the plunger on the other side. This one does not, but if you'll notice this magazine, it has cuts on either side. So later models were able to change the magazine catch to the other side. Of course, you have your slide release right here. You can bring that back and it locks into that notch. I don't really recommend dropping this on an empty chamber a lot, so but you can do that, especially if there's a live round in here. You can just take it and you can take your thumb and you can close it, or you can slingshot it this way. Now the barrel is 4 inches in length. From the end to end, it's 7.5 inches in length, and from the magazine base pad to the top of the sight, it's about 5.5 inches. And slide width is about 7/8 of an inch. Actually pretty thin, and of course you get with the slide stop here, makes it a little wider, the decockers, but still a very manageable until you get down to the grip. It's a pretty thin pointable handgun. As far as weight goes, with the aluminum frame, we're getting 28.9 ounces. That's with the magazine in it. I believe that the 5906 weighs about 38.5 ounces. So it's almost a 10-ounce difference between the two. Now, as far as accuracy goes, I was shooting about 7 yards, and it was shooting low. I want to thank Freedom Munitions for sponsoring the ammo. Really makes things a lot easier, and you get a 5% discount using Suit00 when you buy anything from Freedom Munitions. Now, I put about 200 rounds through this pistol using Freedom Munitions 115 grain. It was their remanufactured ammunition. This, because of the weight, it's a little bit extra weight that you have compared to your polymer frame. It really was very shootable. I mean, in fact, for me, the natural point of aim was there. I'd lift it up and the sights would be dead on. The 3-dot sights were easy to acquire. The gun it functioned well. I didn't have any kind of problems with it. And really, these Smith & Wessons typically were very reliable. And that's one of the great things, and one of the reasons why police units were buying these and using these as an issue duty weapon. A lot of the early semi-automatics had a lot of problems. They would function fine, but you know, any kind of self-defense ammo, there'd be issues. And that's one of the reasons why the revolver stayed in service for so long. It was very reliable. And so Smith & Wesson kind of broke the mold when they started doing that. Unfortunately, I only have one magazine at this time. I'm getting ready to pick up a few more. I believe Metgar Mag makes these, which Metgar makes magazines for a lot of different companies. But the grip, which of course with the 15 rounds it's a little thicker, and then you put this hoe grip on there, it definitely feels your hand. But it just points and shoots really well. A lot of the polymer frame pistols you're going to pick up are going to have a little bit thinner frames. Really, I think with the original plastic grips, it would even be a thinner grip. So a lot of these pistols, especially with the double stacks, seem to be kind of thick. And now with the polymer frames, they've gotten those down. Of course, shooting single action was fine, around 6 pounds. When we went to the double action, it's almost 11 pounds, so it's a pretty hefty pull. And there were a few times where I would use it in double action, but really I prefer single action. It's much easier to get on target quickly. Now, if you're going to have something like this for self-defense, you want to practice with the double action, because you're going to have it with that hammer down if you're carrying it. This is not a cocked and locked pistol. There's no safety because of that decocker. So you want to make sure that you train with the double action trigger pull. And it's only on the first shot. All the subsequent shots will be in single action. So one thing, and I've noticed this with guys that don't have a lot of experience at the range shooting a double action, single action pistol, is that first round will go off and the second one will follow very quickly. Okay, we're going to disassemble the 5903, remove your magazine, double check to make sure the gun is unloaded. You see your slide stop right here. This is also, you pull out for your takedown lever, and back here is a small button. So what we want to do is bring this notch in your slide to where it corresponds with this little circle and hold it in that position. Then we're going to bring the pistol over and just push in on this little button, and then we can just remove our slide stop. From there you can just bring forward your slide. We've got an all-steel recoil spring guide rod, and of course here's the barrel. Bring it out. Very unique with the tapered and how it bevels out. And then of course your slide. Here you can look inside the frame. There's a lot of levers, and when we're putting the slide back, we're going to have to depress these as we slide it over the slide rails. But this is very lightweight. It's the aluminum portion, but it's very well finished. Here we have the slide with the markings. There are no markings of the model number on the slide, only on the frame, and I'm sure that has to do with 5906 and 5903. To reassemble, take your slide and your barrel, lock it in, your recoil spring and guide rod. You'll need to bring it to the second notch, and it doesn't really hold that well on that little notch. So you need to be very careful, and then just go ahead and get it over your slide. Again, these levers, you're going to have to just kind of push them down as you get to them. We're going to bring our hammer back. Now I'm going to go ahead and slide my slide release in first before I bring my slide back. And then once you get it to the point where you can push it through in that little notch, then it goes forward. Insert the mag and double check for function. And we're good to go. There are so many different modern firearm designs out there. It's nice to pick up some of the classics. And one of my best sources for that is Aim Surplus. They're always getting in law enforcement trade-ins or imports of military surplus rifles and pistols. And it's just a great source. That's where I found this one. It was a police trade-in. I'm on their email newsletter. As soon as it came in, I immediately ordered it and paid for it because I knew that they wouldn't be around for long. And so Aim Surplus is a great source for that, and also for a lot of other things. But it's one of the things that I really love Aim Surplus for. I've been buying from those guys for years. And guys, if you're looking for one of the 5900 series pistols, or any of the Smith Gen 1, Gen 2, and Gen 3, a lot of times you can find them on Gunbroker, and a lot of times in your local gun shop. But again, the place I bought this was Aim Surplus, and I highly recommend those guys because there are a lot of guns I have snagged that are hard to come by, and typically for a great price. This ran 330 bucks or something like that, and you know, for a nice quality 9mm double stack pistol, Smith & Wesson, that's a great price. Guys, I've really been looking for a 5906 for a while, but once I found the 5903, I'm glad I got this one. I love this aluminum frame. And not to say that if I ever come across a good deal on a 5906, I won't pick it up. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic. It is a double. Okay, let's get this out of the way. And so, okay, let's start all over. 11 pounds, 10 ounces. Good grief. All right. So while I'm a big fan of the polymer striker fire pistols, they ain't got the moxie like this Smith & Wesson.
Do you have the moxie? I've got the moxie. Oh yeah. Smith & Wesson, oh yeah.